In this lesson, we're going to begin blocking in the major forms of our level. Alright, so we're going to create a very small level, just kind of a one-room sort of deal, and that will give us enough to work with a lot of the different aspects of Unreal Engine 4, moving, manipulating, bringing in objects, importing, and things like that, working with materials and blueprints. And to get started, we want to create a new level. So to do this, let's go up to File, and New Level. Here you have two different templates that we can choose from. We have the default, which will give us that sky in the background, or we have an empty level. I'm going to show you how to create that sky later on, so let's choose empty level. So now that we have our empty level, you'll see that it's a very lonely place, just black, and we have our grid. So just you and the grid. Now what we want to do is we want to change that grid up. I want to make sure that our incrementation is set to 100. I like to have that very large to start out, especially whenever I'm in the blocking phase. I like to work large and then work very small later on. So to get started, let's go ahead and bring in some brushes. It's important that you block out your levels using this BSP brushes because it's done very, very quickly. It gives you an idea of scale that you need to model your assets with, and then it also gives you an idea of how the game is going to play. And so doing that as quickly as possible is a very, very important technique. So let's go ahead and bring in our cylinder from our geometry. Now make sure that you're under the place panel, geometry, and cylinder. Left click and drag that into your level, and there we go. Let's go ahead and go to our top view. And I'm going to make sure that that is set right at the origin line. Let's go ahead and hit F on the keyboard to be able to see that. And let's drag that right there. So the move tool should be right on the red and the green line. Let's go ahead and go back to our perspective view. And I want to change the size of our cylinder that we have here. This is pretty large. You can see that the outer radius that we have for this cylinder is 1000. Now if you'll remember from math class, radius goes from the center out to the edge, and so this cylinder is 2000 units across. Now it's important and worth mentioning that Unreal units, one Unreal unit equals 1 centimeter, and so you can, if you're more apt to using real world scale, you'll want to think in centimeters. So what I want to do is I want to create my outer radius. Instead of it being 2000 centimeters across or Unreal units across, I want it to be only 1000 units across. So instead, I'm going to change my outer radius to 500. Okay. Now remember, radius is from the center out, so you need to double that amount if you're looking for a very specific unit across. Now we have this cylinder set. I also want to change its height, so we're going to go to the Z parameter. We're going to change that to 400. Hit enter, and you'll see that that has been changed. I also want to make sure that the bottom of this cylinder is right on top of our grid. So I'm going to go to my side view. You could also hit Alt-K on the keyboard, and then we'll simply drag that up until the bottom of our cylinder is right along that green line there. Perfect. Let's go back to our perspective view, and let's go ahead and create the interior walls for this. So if you'll remember from our brush lesson a couple of lessons ago, we had duplicated our original shape, so let's go ahead and do that. If you'll remember the keyboard shortcut, that was Control and W. You could also go up to Edit and Duplicate, okay, which you can see right here. And let's move this cylinder back into its position. So I'm going to go up 1 in the Y and over 1 in the X to where it's right on top of that again. Now with that cylinder brush 2 still selected, let's change its outer radius. I'm going to change that to 490. Okay, so hit enter on that. You'll see that that gives us a radius all the way around to 490, and it creates a thickness in between the additive brush and this new brush of 10. Okay, all the way around. So now that we've done that, let's also make sure that we do not have or that we have a floor and a ceiling. So what we can do is change our Z value from 480 to 380. Now the reason that we're doing that, if we go to our side view, is we need it to subtract from the top and the bottom 10. Okay, so there we have our values. All right, now let's say that we wanted the inside measurements to actually be 400. What we could do is we could make the adjustments to the outside radius instead. So let's say that the top of this is actually 410. We could do that if we wanted to. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and just leave it the way it is. It all depends on how you want to measure it. Okay, so with this, I'm going to make sure that I change my brush type to subtractive. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our perspective view. Let's go inside of our cylinder, and there we have a perfect room with walls and everything. So this is looking really, really good. Happy with the way that looks so far. And with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also add a little bit to our room. So I want to create kind of a square back end, so it squares off. Now I could come in and I could modify this piece of geometry. Okay, we could totally do that. But what I want to do is I want to add just a box BSP brush to this. So let's simply left click and drag that into the scene. And let's change our values. Let's go to our X value, and we're going to change that to 1000. And let's make sure we add another 0 to that. Let's also change our Y value to 1000, and then our Z value to 400. Let's go to our top view. You could also hit Alt J to do that. And let's position this to where it's right about here. Okay. So looking at that, it's looking pretty good. We could put it right there, but I want to go ahead and put it maybe right here at this position. Right there in the center will be fine. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so there we have our box into position. Let's duplicate that by hitting Control and W. Let's put that back into its original position, and then we're going to change our X, Y, and Z values. So we're going to do 980 on the X, we'll do 980 on the Y, and then we'll also do 380 on the Z. Let's go ahead and take a look at our perspective view. Okay, with that all set. And we forgot to move both of those up, so let's just simply go to our side view. Let's use our marquee selection by left clicking and dragging around both of those boxes, and we'll simply drag those up into position. So here you can see the inner box, okay, is set properly. It's lining up with our inner cylinder. Let's select that cylinder and set it to subtractive. Let's go to our perspective view. Let's go inside, and you'll notice that we have a wall right here in the center. Why is it doing that? Well, if we take a look at our top view, you'll see that we have the outer radius of that box, and then we have the inner box, and they're not touching. And so because they're not touching, it's creating a wall right there. So with this inner box selected, let's go to the geometry editing. Let's make sure that we're on edit, and simply select around those vertices at the top, and then we'll drag that forward. And we're going to drag that forward 10 units. Let's make sure that we change our grid spacing to 10, so we can do that. Push that forward, and then now if we switch that back to 100 and we go to our perspective view, if we look on the inside, we no longer have that wall. And now we have one solid room that starts out as a box and kind of turns into a cylinder. This is going to give us plenty of room to put in these nice big windows in here to where we can see outside to our room. Now in the next lesson, what we want to do is we want to create those windows. So I'm going to show you how to do that next.